Sup with it, Benjamin D'Souza here, and just perusing YouTube and thing, and I come across a couple vids and whatnot. One vid in particular that I just felt inspired to speak on and throw my hat in the ring on this particular subject. And it was a video that was mirrored. I didn't actually watch it on the content creator's channel who made it. I watched it on another guy's channel who mirrored it, I guess. But it was a video that BGS Ibmore had mirrored from this particular gentleman called LAR Movement. And I'm subscribed to both of these gentlemen. And, some things that they say I agree with, some things they don't. I mean, every YouTube content creator that I'm subscribed to, I don't hang on to every single word that they say. Some things they say, I might say, that's insightful. Other things they say, I disagree with. I mean, it's just the nature of, you know, just the nature of things. But this particular video that LAR Movement had produced that I, took somewhat offense to was the video, I believe it's titled Urban Struggle versus Suburban Struggle. Now, just to establish a little bit of credibility for myself on in speaking or on speaking, in speaking, whatever, in speaking on this particular topic, is that for much of my childhood, I grew up in the city, in the inner city. Wasn't the roughest neighborhood. I'm not gonna sit up here and say that, I grew up in Marcy or Queensbridge or Cabrini Greens or Magnolias, you know. But it was a city nonetheless. And then I'll say from my early adolescence until my adulthood, I grew up in the suburbs, so I got a I got a soft spot in my heart for both black people who grew up in an urban environment and also in a suburban environment. And I felt in LAR Movement's video that he took a couple of shots that some ill-informed shots that he really shouldn't have took on suburban black folks. You know, suburbanites unite. But I just felt the need to speak on a couple of things. First of all, I felt that well, what I noticed and what I observed in his video is that he was trying to discredit the experiences and the struggles of black suburban kids, while at the same time not even experiencing it himself. Being child a child or an adolescent and growing up in suburbia as opposed to being an adult and living in suburbia and white suburbia are two different things. He was only coming from it. He was only coming at the topic from a single scope. He was just looking at it. He was he was on the outside looking in and giving his take on the situation, and I thought that was kind of unfair to black kids in white suburbia. And this his whole video was spawned by, I guess, a hangout that Black Gnostic Speaks had held, and I guess I don't know because I didn't watch the. I wasn't there for the hangout. I haven't listened to the hangout, so I didn't hear what all went on. But from what I can tell, is that black suburban, man came on there and had some things to say. And he, took exception to it. And one of the things that he said that really caught my ire was he said something to the effect of, "Do you guys have to worry about cops killing you?" And then the facial expression that he made when he looked into the camera after he said that was kind of, it was kind of condescending in a way, like, you know, giving you that nigga please look, like, which kind of pissed me off because what he's not understanding about this is that white suburbia is the enclave of every powerful and influential white person in your respective city. And they will fight tooth and nail every dollar and cent, every drop of blood, sweat, and tear to preserve that enclave. And the thing that gets a lot of black folks caught up, especially black folks who don't grow up around, or who don't grow up around white folks, or who are not too familiar with white folks, is that they get their cues about white people from TV. And in some cases, white they think every white dude is like uh the motherfuckers off of the Big Bang Theory, a bunch of physics studying, mathematics studying, prim and proper, uh, Dungeons and Dragons playing, corny motherfuckers that couldn't curl a goddamn 20-pound dumbbell if their life depended on it, and who wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight or punch their way out of a wet paper bag. And I'm saying, bro, you couldn't be further from the truth. See, here's the thing about urban centers, or to be more specific, black urban centers and white suburbia in your respective city, whatever city you're from, is that the white folks who live in white suburbia and whatnot, they're not concerned with what goes on in your urban center. They're not concerned with it. They don't care about, you know, the gang banging and the violence and the drugs that go on in your neighborhood. But trust and believe, if the slightest inkling of that type of behavior and subculture or culture even even thinks about rearing its ugly head in white suburbia, they are on it like a hawk. And like I said, in these in white suburbia, this is the home of the most influential and powerful and wealthiest people of your respective city. So I mean, if you're a black kid growing up in white suburbia, you're going to school with the sons and daughters of doctors, lawyers, university teachers, um, well-to-do, wealthy business owners, um, sons and daughters of professional athletes and whatnot. You're rubbing shoulders with the heir apparents to some very heavy hitters. And you think you, as a black kid, being surrounded by white people in their stronghold, you think that there is no threat to you whatsoever? You are sadly mistaken, and you severely underestimate what you're up against. And as a strategist, that's just poor strategy, poor stratagem, however you say it, whatever. And I've been on both sides of the fence. I've seen it from all angles. Like I said, my childhood, I grew up in the city. My early adolescence to my adulthood, I grew up in the suburbs. I've seen it all. I've seen both sides. And my problem with the whole video that you made, I'm not knocking you, I'm not attacking you or anything. But my whole thing is, and I hate to use this word, but you shouldn't be so insensitive to the claims that black suburban kids make, because if you want to move up in affluence in this country, you're gonna have to know, and you're gonna have to learn and know how to rub shoulders with white folks. Who better to teach you how to do that than black kids who grew up around white folks? And if you alienate these black suburbanites and they think, well, damn, if I'm not accepted by urban blacks, where can I get accepted? You're essentially missing out on a wealth of information. Now, I don't know the whole context of the exchange that you had with said suburbanite black kid and whatnot, but what I gleaned from your video about the whole hangout that took place was, you kind of were dismissive of his whole experience, and I think it very unwise to dismiss another man's experience. You should consider every man's experience that comes from every walk of life, and kind of put yourself in his shoes to see where he's coming from, and put your own spin on it to see how you could navigate if you were in his shoes. Now, like I said, I grew up my early childhood in the city. My sixth grade year, I went to one of the roughest schools in the city, because straight out of elementary school, a fifth grader could choose the middle school he went to, and whatever middle school you went to, you were gonna go to that high school. I chose Southeast, so if I were to go through Southeast Middle, I would eventually go to Southeast High. If you chose to go to Central Middle, then eventually you go to Central High, Westport Middle, Westport High, etc., etc. You get the point. Well, anyway, at this time in the mid '90s, I didn't quite understand, the climate of Southeast Middle. So I know about standing in line in the pouring rain, or snow in the cold and whatnot, waiting to go through the metal detectors. I know about that. I know about that. So the urban schools are as advertised, but to be is naive, and I don't want to say, there is a level of arrogance there. So to be as naive and arrogant to think that you could go to a suburban school and navigate your way through there like it's nothing is is it's essentially you putting yourself in a trick bag thinking that you can do that. Because let me tell you, like I said before, these white suburbs are the enclave and the stronghold of the most powerful, wealthiest people of your city. And they are hell bent on preserving their way of life. If you as an you as a urban kid come out there and even challenge to threaten that way of life, they do have ways of dealing with you. They got ways of dealing with you, and Also, what really caught my eye about the video is that you just kept you talking to you. You just kept going on and on about how hard your struggle was growing up. Having to dry clothes with a fan in the wintertime, or having to scrape mold off of a piece of bread, or having to hold the chunks back out of a past date bottle of milk just to get the milk in, and how you had to pick roaches out of cereal and whatnot. Listen, bro, that's not a badge of honor. That is a sign that your parents failed to provide you the certain creature comforts of you having a washer and a dryer and a fresh loaf of bread in the house and some before date milk and having cereal that you didn't have to pick roaches out of. That's a sign that you failed. That's not a badge of honor that you wear. Like, look what I came through. And that's one of the things that pisses me off about the black community, because we think that walking through the fire and getting war wounds of some sort is some sort of some kind is like a badge of honor and shit. That's Get off of that, bro. The most powerful and wealthiest people in this country are the sons and daughters of parents of affluence who whose parents had the means to afford them the creature comforts and to give them a comfortable life so they didn't have to worry about survival. All they had to worry about is honing their skills and focusing on their um, their goal and whatnot, their goal in life. And I know you, and I heard you say something about, yeah, I know people who come from other countries, this, that, and the third. And I'm like, listen, bro, listen. And I'm gonna give a quick story about both my mother, the upbringing of my mother and my father. My mother and my father overcame tremendous odds, and they sacrificed a lot to provide, you know, somewhat of a comfortable life for my brothers and I. My mother, born in the 50s, growing up in the 60s, in the South, Jim Crow. She was a senior in high school when they desegregated the schools in the South. And she lived in the country, dirt poor. She had to help the family pick cotton and do domestic work in town to put food on the table. And not to mention they're out in the country. No indoor plumbing. Imagine. Now my mother's the third of 15 children. Imagine you got 10, 12 people in your house and it's your week to clean out the outhouse. So you got to shovel a week's worth of shit and piss out the outhouse because it's your week. That's rough. There ain't no amount of sleeping on the floor, picking roaches out of some cereal in the world that's gonna replace that. Not when you don't even have heat. All you got is a fireplace, and you gotta get your ass out there and chop wood to make sure your house is heated. Like, come on, get out of that. And my father grew up in a Caribbean country in South America, third world country. My father told me a story because I thought about moving down there back in '07, and he talked me out of it. I called the embassy and everything, and I was gonna apply for citizenship by way of descent. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. He sat me down and he told me, he said, "Listen, son, you don't know hunger until lived there, and he told me a story. When he was 7 years old, him and six other his friends, they called themselves the Secret Seven. They weren't a gang; they were just a group or whatever. They took some machetes and they, got some sticks, made some makeshift spears out of some sticks, and they went down to the river, shallow part of the river, and waited for a manatee to come by. Now these are 7, 8 year old kids, 6, 7, 8 year old kids, and they killed that manatee, skinned them, dressed them, cut them up, and divvied out the meat to each group member to bring home to his respective family. So everybody's got struggle. So urban struggle or urban poor, your first world poor. You got a first world struggle in that case. And to get back to him asking the question, have you ever been worried or about police officers taking your life? Some of that sort. When I was probably about my senior year in high school, I lived right around the corner from this affluent town. It was a small town. Actually, it was a lake. It was a lake, and all the houses around this lake comprised this town. It was like a town of maybe 100 or so people. It was a lake, and it was its own community. It was its own town, had its own, it's got its own police force, city hall, all that. Well, anyway, they were doing some renovations and some landscaping work on the lake. So they had dirt, rocks out there and whatnot. And my mother, she was doing some gardening work, and she seen the rocks as she drove past the lake, and she seen the rocks and the gravel and whatnot. She asked me to go down there and pick up some rocks. I said, all right, hop in the car, go down there, post up, pop the trunk, get to tossing rocks in the trunk. This particular officer of this small town, because it's a suburb within the suburb. It's like a little city, little town. It's not even a city. It's a town inside, the suburb. But anyway, he approaches me and he says, "What are you doing?" So I'm just grabbing some rocks. He said, "Put the rocks down before I take you to jail." And he was not nice about it at all. Like he was an asshole about it in every sense of the word. And I look at him and I'm shocked. I'm taken aback. I'm like, damn. So I'm like, you really gonna take me to jail over some rocks? He didn't crack a smile. He didn't say a word. He gave me a look like, listen here, darky. If you don't comply this instant, and he had his hand on his weapon. He had his hand on his weapon. So if you don't comply this instant, there's gonna be some issues. So I read his facial expression, observed his posture, and I said, all right, this guy means business. Dumped the rocks back out, hopped back in the car, and went on about my way. He was looking for an excuse to Trayvon Martin me. And another thing, Trayvon Martin, since I brought him up, he had gotten killed in a suburb. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he was at his father's house, and I guess his father had lived in a townhouse neighborhood of a suburb somewhere down in Florida, somewhere. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. But you got rogue, wannabe neighborhood watch, overzealous watchmen out there who are looking. And also as a kid, I'm walking through the street, coming home from the park. You know, I'm at the park playing basketball. They got the little quarter thing where you can put the quarters in and have some lights. I'm walking home. I got on a black t-shirt and some gym shorts, and this guy comes out the house and he's asking me, "Who are you and where are you going?" I'm like, "Dude, my family been living here since '95. What are you talking about? Your house was just, your house. You just bought your house 2 months ago. Why are you questioning me?" And then the police were called. Other shit. Like that. Like I literally could have been Trayvon Martin before Trayvon Martin. This is years before that. But I was, the dude didn't have a heart to pop the shit off because he'd got his ass handed to him or whatever the case was. But that's nor here nor there. Another instance. This is my junior year in high school. Mom's bought me a car, right? License plate is in her name. Now, unbeknownst to me, she has an outstanding warrant from 90. Now, this is like early 2000s. She has an outstanding warrant, outstanding traffic warrant from like 97. Because I guess like back in 96, 97, she had breast cancer. She got a traffic ticket. She never got that shit handled because she was going through chemo, radiation, and all that. So she just, I don't know, she just let it go and just forgot about it. So it turned into a warrant where they were gonna arrest her. So she buys me this car. Car's in my name. I mean, the car's in, license plate is registered in her name or whatever. I pull up to the gas station. As I'm driving to the gas station, I notice a police officers behind me. I don't have any tint on me. I'm a black kid, young black kid in a white Suburban, no tint. So obviously the officer can see me. He's on my bumper, but I'm not tripping because I'm legit. So I pull up to the gas station. He pulls in right behind me. He pulls, he blocks my car in. I get out the car and he asks me, "Are you such and such?" And he asked me, and he says my mother's name. Let's say my mother's name is Abigine Jackson. I don't know. He says, "Are you Abigine Jackson?" And I look at him, I kind of look at him with a puzzled look, like, I look at him like he's stupid. Like, do I look like I'm Abigine Jackson, dude? I'm looking at him like, no, I'm not Abigine Jackson. Like, they're looking for trouble. That's not just, he's just letting me know, like, well, you better be on your best behavior around here, darky. You can't be just so dismissive of another man's experience, especially if you haven't lived it. If you haven't walked in that man's shoes, then you can't just be so submissive, so dismissive of that man's experience. And then one thing that pissed me off is he said something to the effect of, well, if you know, since I went through more, that builds character. I'm paraphrasing. Don't quote me on this. So if I had what you had, I'd be way above where you're at, nigga. You don't know. If was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. And furthermore, going through the urban struggle and growing up in abject poverty, if that was some sort of character building foundation, then the black community should be full of ass kicking titans of industry all over the fucking place. We should have doctors and lawyers and entrepreneurs and titans of industry falling falling from the sky. I shouldn't be able to, if growing up in poverty and struggling and having the urban struggle is such a badge of honor, I shouldn't be able to go to a black community and throw a rock without hitting a nigga that's just killing it. Does someone growing up with, more affluence than you, does that make them better than you? No. And the inverse is true as well. You growing up with less than someone who has um, more affluence than you doesn't make you uh, a person of more integrity and hard work and grit and gumption and, and, and wisdom and whatnot. You got to hear everybody's side. You got to hear everybody's story and learn life from everybody's story, you know. Because growing up in a white suburb, when I first got there back in the mid 90s, I can count on two hands all the black kids in my class. By the time I got to my junior, senior year in high school, you know, the black population had grown and we all kind of stuck together, like a lion pride as a form of protection and whatnot. And you had kids who moved out there their junior or senior year in high school from a rough part of the city, and you had kids out there who grew up out there, who've been out there since kindergarten. You had black goths and black rock people who black skateboarders and whatnot. And I never shunned anybody or looked down on any black person for where life took them. To this day, I got friends whom I went to middle school and high school with. All of them. Some of them black friends. Some of them are just straight hip hop and R&B. Others are rock and roll and actually playing a band. And I can sit down and talk to both spectrums. And me, I pride myself on being that guy. I'm the type of guy. Listen, I can go to a family gathering of mine and whatnot, and look at my cousins and say, "Hey, what it hit for? Shake them up. We can do $1 a roll. I'm catching those. Give me those. 7. That's mine's." Or I get down on the domino table and, you know, pick up my bones and say, "Who got big six?" But at the same time, I can sit down and talk, Descartes and Socrates with you, and talk biology and geopolitics and shit with you. Because I always took the approach of, I'm not going to dismiss or be dismissive of the next man's experience. I'm going to soak all this shit in. And my experience doesn't make me better or inferior to you. And your experience doesn't make you better or inferior to me. We both got something that we can learn from each other. Now, I might not know about all those examples of, you know, moldy bread, spoiled milk, and picking roaches out of cereal. I might not have a lot of experience with those situations, but at the same time, bro, you don't know about being invited to, a party that of your senior class member throws, and you walk into his crib and you're greeted by his mother, and you look up 30 feet, 40 feet in the air, and it's a big ass chandelier with a spiral staircase, and the crib looks like some shit off of MTV Cribs. And they got a indoor wood basketball court. And his sister got an indoor trampoline because she's a cheerleader type of shit. Like, he's driving to school in a 2003 Jeep Wrangler type of shit. Like it's some shit that I learned just being around other shit, and I try to absorb knowledge from everybody that I can, and I try to hear their side of the story. And I'm like, man, To me, this whole urban struggle versus suburban struggle is tantamount to saying you're not black enough if you don't go through, if you don't experience the urban struggle. And this has been a thing that I've noticed amongst black folks for the most part. And I've noticed this since my middle school years because I've experienced it. I've noticed that there is a level of resentment from urban quote unquote blacks towards suburban blacks. And I'm like, it's not his fault that his parents, position themselves to where they could, provide this particular lifestyle for him and to where he can get these sort of experiences and these comforts and whatnot. It doesn't mean that that struggle doesn't come with it. You know what I mean? I mean, shit. It's it doesn't mean that if if the suburban black grows up in somewhat of a level of affluence, it doesn't mean that he's better than you or worse than you. It just shit. He was born into it. You know what I mean? And in some cases, it doesn't mean that his parents might be better than yours. Shit, sometimes people just get lucky. Sometimes people just luck up. You know what I mean? And just because you grow up in an urban environment and you grow up through the urban struggle doesn't make you more resilient, tougher, stronger than the suburban kid that grew up in the suburban environment and went through the suburban struggles. But the whole video was just about the brother going on and on about how, well, if how he went through this struggle and that struggle growing up, and how he didn't have his own room until high school, and this and that, as if suburban kids don't have struggles of their own. Who's to say that you don't have what it takes to survive the suburban struggles? Because if you don't have the mental acuity, or if you are not intuitive enough to navigate your way through the terrain, you could possibly run into a trigger finger, itchy cop or a vigilante of some sort who's just waiting for an excuse to put a bullet in your black ass because you shouldn't even be here in the first place. Like what's the what's the young brother? What's the young brothers that got killed at a gas station because they were playing loud music, and some old white man shot their car up because he felt threatened for some reason because their music was loud and offensive to him. What's the white dude's name and what's the brothers' names that got killed? Just imagine living life like that on a daily basis. Just imagine being an adolescent teen, not even having a grasp on how the world operates, really. You're coming into your own. You're coming into puberty. You really don't even know how the world operates yet. But this is you're in the shit. As they say in Tropic Thunder, you gotta put them in the shit. You're in the shit. Just imagine that. Because I mean, hey, if you're a black man living in a affluent white suburb, and the white folks don't want you there, you got to think some of these vigilantes like George Zimmerman and whatnot are emboldened for the simple fact that, hey, they got buddies and pals on the police force, or their father might be a lawyer or a county judge of some sort. Now, I I currently live in the suburban area of my respective city right now. And when I ride around, I'm getting older. I don't really like my music up that loud. A lot of times I just turn the stereo off completely and just ride with my thoughts. But I'm on my P's and Q's when I drive because I know. But I'm not too much worried about it because by this point in time, a lot of the white people that I went to school with are on the police force by now. Funny story. I got pulled over by this chick who I went to high school with, white chick I went to high school with. And I was coming back from a friend of mine's house and I had a few drinks, but I wasn't drunk. And she suspected I was drunk. She gave me a DUI test and everything. And I had like a warrant for a parking ticket or some shit. And I'm like, come on, girl, don't we we had 10th grade history, we had 11th grade history together. We had world history together. You gonna arrest me? She's like, I gotta do it. I gotta do it, Benjamin. I'm sorry. And then like a month later, she found me on Facebook and tried to befriend me, and I was so pissed that she arrested me that night. I'm like, bitch, I'm not adding you as my friend. But I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying. Don't discredit each person's struggle. Now, I'm very cognizant of the urban struggle. I was born in 84, 85, 84, 83, whatever. And I've spent a lot of time in the urban center. I know about the urban struggle. I'm not discrediting that at all. But I'm saying we don't need to be discrediting the suburban struggle. I hope this video was insightful and whatnot. Let me know what y'all think, man. It's Benjamin D'Souza.